there's not going to be a court case against him or charges filed, although those charges wouldn't go to trial until after Joe Biden was out of office because of the Justice Department standing order that presidents can't be prosecuted while in office. But they're just going to try to wait out the storm, and hopefully there won't be any other big bombshells that call into question Joe Biden's competency, and that by November all of this will blow over. I think where we might see this contribute to an important development in this presidential race is it might make a third-party candidate more interested in jumping in the race. The door is now wide open for, say, a no-labels candidate to step forward, no labels being that independent organization that's searching for a third-party independent presidential candidate, for someone to willingly take on that mantle because Donald Trump, in their view, is clearly not qualified to return to the White House. And Joe Biden, there's more and more mounting evidence that the oldest man ever to serve as president right now shouldn't be in office well into his mid-80s, given all of these developments, all of this evidence that we're seeing now. I mean, Sarah, what do you think comes of all of this?
Yeah, the third-party candidate is really a good threat to Joe Biden. It's a big deal because people are looking for an alternative to the president. When it comes to Donald Trump, he's got about 40% of the vote locked down. His base absolutely love him, so he's less vulnerable to defections. On the other hand, has anybody heard Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speak recently? Because he sounds like he's more likely to vote for Joe Biden, and he's got really weird views on COVID-19. It's at the moment he's polling relatively strongly as a third-party candidate, and wounded Biden because, of course, his father was Robert F. Kennedy, a hero for the Democrats. So on the name alone, he's going quite well at the moment. What the rest of this means for Joe Biden, I mean, some people in the Democrats are saying, look, we just can't keep going with this, and hoping that Joe Biden lasts till the next election and beyond. We've got to find somebody else. But then you're back to the old problem of, well, who do you find? Kamala Harris is doing better than she has been doing. She's found a few issues like abortion that she's getting some results on. But nobody thinks she can beat Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup with president, and nobody wants to tell the first African-American and Asian female vice president to step aside and let somebody else take over. And maybe they would if they could think about somebody who would do better than Kamala Harris. But they can't. So the Democrats are absolutely stuck with Joe Biden. It's embarrassing.
I'd say two things to add to that. Number one, with Robert Kennedy Jr., I mean, he's toying now, isn't he, with running as the Libertarian Party candidate. And the relevance of that is that the Libertarians can get him onto the ballot all around the United States. So oddball as he may be, Sarah, it is possible that he does mount a real challenge in quite a few places, and a challenge, frankly, to both candidates, one would assume, because they take people off the vote, but just add a kind of a sense of unknowability to the race, which is already pretty unknowable and volatile, which I think might persuade the Biden people to go to him and to say, Biden people, and this is the second point, and it's Dr. Jill, isn't it, as she styles herself, it's his wife, and possibly one or two other close family members, but you assume that if something is going to persuade him to go, as Anthony was saying, there's no mechanism, there's no sort of party mechanism to get him to go, but there is a family mechanism, and a desire for him not to be humiliated, and a desire for his place in history to be assured, and you do wonder whether they might act. And as for the timing and whether it leads to Kamala Harris, which will be, I think everyone accepts, probably a disaster against Trump, she could not win. But actually, is there a way of it not being Kamala Harris, but also not being the firing of Kamala Harris, as it were, which would tear the party apart? And I just wonder whether, in that circumstance, you're looking at not a contested primary, but at something that happens later on in the year, possibly during the summer, when the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, pretty much would have the chance to choose someone, and they'll be forced to choose someone, and will not choose her. And I think with people's minds so concentrated then on the threat of Donald Trump, assuming Trump was by then the Republican candidate, I just wonder whether all the kind of civil war stuff within the Democratic Party might be put forward for another day.
It's certainly possible. I wrote a while back that only Jill Biden could tell Joe Biden to step down, that he's done enough, you know. Then thank you for your service, sir, and all the rest. It has to come from his wife. But the truth is, recently, she's been his most ardent defender and seems to really enjoy being in the White House and believes in her husband as the only man capable to defeat Donald Trump. So I don't think necessarily that Jill's going to be on side. I don't think that Democrats can say, come on, First Lady, do your bit, tell your man to stand down. Whether anyone's got the nerve to do it right up at the Democratic convention this summer, I don't know. Obviously, a lot can happen in the next 6 months, including threats to Joe Biden's health. So we'll have to see.
Right. One report from a special counsel I don't think is going to be enough to change the dynamic. Even a damning one like this is not going to be enough to change the dynamic within the Biden family. If his poll numbers totally tank, and they're already not that great, but he's kind of, you know, around the margin of error head-to-head against Donald Trump. If he drops down precipitously, maybe that would nudge him, but it seems like the ship has sailed for getting Joe Biden to stand down and let someone else go in. We've already had the South Carolina primary. We're going to have a Super Tuesday here in a matter of weeks. He's going to start amassing the kind of delegates to go to the national convention that will deliver him the nomination, whether other Democrats like it or not. I think about how hard it is to take the keys to the car away from an elderly grandparent or a parent. Now think about how hard it would be to take the keys to the country, to the nation, away from Joe Biden. It is a massive task, and the potential for disruption, the potential for ending up with someone who, or infighting that would lead Donald Trump to a stroll into the White House is just too great, I think, in the Democrats' calculations, at least at this point.
I think the Democrats are also counting on one thing, that in actual elections, they've actually overperformed expectations, that people are very worried about issues like abortion, they're worried about MAGA extremism, as Joe Biden calls it. Don't get too worried. Actual elections have gone pretty well for the Democrats, and that's the ultimate test. I think they're going to hang on to Joe Biden for as long as they possibly can.
Is anyone actually convinced by that, Sarah, by that line?
Well, I think that's what they tell themselves in the small hours of the morning when they're lying awake at night worrying.